All right.
Yeah. Hi, everyone. Hi, everyone. I'm Shilpa Shah, and I am one of the co-founders of Hummingbird Web Solutions. I manage cybergyms, focusing on the responsive theme and making it Gutenberg friendly. But today is not really about me. We are here to talk to Josepha Haden Chomposy.
Hello.
And hey, Josepha really doesn't need any introduction, but if you haven't had the chance to meet her or e-meet her, let me do that anyways, yeah? So Josepha joined Automatic in 2015. She started as a community wrangler, and since the past few years, she's been wearing many different hats, taking on new roles and new challenges. And now, as the executive director of the WordPress.org project, she does a whole lot of stuff like financial planning, sponsorship relations, and running several volunteer programs as well. But this is really Josepha of her LinkedIn profile. And I'm sure there's so much more to her. So let's get started and find out, shall we?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for having me. I know that Matt really also was hoping to be here, but he had other engagements that he had to attend to. And so I'm so excited that you all invited me.
Sure, as are we. So let's get started. Right. So tell us how this all started, Josepha. How you got into WordPress and the journey so far.
So how I got into WordPress is actually, I find it surprising, or rather it surprises people. I got into WordPress because my mother introduced me to it. In 2009, I was trying to be a starving artist. And I was going home to visit my family, and my mother told me, like, you can come home this weekend, which is fine, but I have this conference that I'm going to. And so if you want to come with me, that's okay. And I thought to myself, that sounds like a party. I will go to that. And I did. And I learned all about WordPress. I met a number of really interesting people. I met Syed Balki there, who is, of course, a longtime WordPress supporter and contributor. And at the end of that event, I thought to myself, well, there's no reason that like my current hometown of Kansas City can't also have one of these events. And so I pulled together a meetup group, and yeah, my mom continued on into the kind of SEO and content area of things. And then I had gone into the data science and like market strategy side of things. And then I ended up here. So yeah, that's how I got into it. It's because of my mom.
Yeah, I think that's a unique story. Yeah. I don't think anyone would imagine that's how you got in. So, right. So tell us what you do at Automatic. I mean, as part of your responsibilities, what's the part that you really love? What are your challenges? What are the challenges that you love tackling head on?
Yeah. So what I do at Automatic, I actually lead our open source division. So the group that is part of that 5 for the Future commitment from Automatic reports to me. They're all out in the community as well. And so most contributors will know many of the names and faces that are there. People like Andrea Middleton, Cami Chaos is there. We've got all of the Gutenberg folks in that team, all of the meta folks. And so my daily work is making sure that not only are they able to do all of the tasks that they need to do, but also that our community does. So I kind of have everything kind of broken out over the week. I focus on internal blockers and making sure that everyone has what they need to get their work done on Mondays. And then I focus on community blockers and making sure that I've gotten everything out of people's way on Tuesday. And then for the rest of the week, it kind of depends on what sort of exciting things occurred on Monday and Tuesday. But there are about 60 people in my group here at Automatic. And then, of course, probably about 100 contributors that I work with in the community side of things. And they all work with various people as well. And so it's this big group of folks. And what I love the most, and that I think is the hardest, the work that I love the most, that is also the hardest, is all of the planning work that has to go into this. I don't work on any projects that are shorter than 3 to 5 years in length at this point. Yeah. And so everything that I like, all the things that you see me doing this year are things that started 3 or 5 years ago. Right.
Mm.
And same for all of the rest of everything that you'll see me do for all of the remaining times. And so I help to make sure that the conversation around Gutenberg and full site editing is a little bit more coordinated this time around. I know that that was our biggest feedback after 5.0, after getting the block editor in WordPress. Like at the end of the day, people could see the value, they knew what we were doing, but they just hated how we did it, and they hated not knowing what was going on. And so we're trying to do that better, and we've been working toward that since 5.0 got out the door. And so yeah, it's everything that I do is 3 to 5 years in length. It's my favorite part of the work. It's also the hardest part of the work. That's my current work. My literal actual favorite work that I do is my community work and working directly with the community, but I don't get to do that as often these days as I used to. So yeah.
Sure. So tell us more about that. Yeah. So tell us, how do you motivate people? I mean, those who are working as volunteers, how do you get them to, actually get involved and contribute their own personal time?
Yeah. So one of the most interesting things about the contributor makeup of the WordPress project is that it's like 1/3 corporately sponsored and 2/3 individual contributors and self-sponsored contributors. And I think that that is the exact right balance. I always try to, when we have to bring in more full-time sponsored volunteers to like manage our administrative tasks and stuff, I try to also bring in our 2/3 voice, because I think that's the right balance of that. But it's hard to motivate volunteers in a lot of cases, but for WordPress in particular, I haven't necessarily found that it's hard to motivate us as a collective unit. I have found that WordPress really is deeply connected in like their local communities and why they want to make WordPress better, and understanding that like WordPress has created XYZ opportunities for them. And so motivating people to give back under those circumstances is not like the simplest task, but like, but I have found that keeping folks motivated when we're not able to get together in person is actually quite a bit harder. And that going into this, and I knew that going into 2020 when we were trying to cancel all of our events. But it's not been something that I have been able to figure out a way to replace. One of my favorite experiences of our in-person events is when you get everybody together at a contributor day, and like all of the things that were preventing people from feeling like they could contribute, you're able to take away. Like you're able to get them the access they need and the tools that they need and the knowledge that they need, either just like by actively giving it to them or because they met people that they feel comfortable asking those questions of. And when you have all the tools and knowledge and skills, the ability to contribute is a lot easier to work through. But when you don't have any of the rest of those things, then sometimes it can be really hard. But, in my experience, for WordPress especially, we have this gigantic group of contributors and volunteers. And when I am clear about like, this is where we're headed, it's very important, and I think we've got to do it, like that really gives the community some confidence in what we're trying to do, and a willingness to come with me, at least, on what I'm trying to help us do. So yeah. That was a very long answer. I could have said something easier.
But I see I totally get it. I mean, when it comes to motivation, I don't know. I mean, that's the thing about the WordPress community. It's self-driven most of the times, but obviously it needs direction, and I think that's the tough part. So, right. So, do you have to sort of hold back people who you think might be taking on too much, or doing too much, and you're like, yo, slow down? Do you think you need to do that often?
Yeah, all the time. And especially in 2020, that ended up being really true a lot. This is an odd thing for people who are not familiar with working with large groups or working with volunteers. The idea that when you see people like showing up to the work and they want to do 25 things, and you ask them to like, please come back and work on one or two things, that feels counterintuitive because you think
It's a nice problem to have, Josepha.
it is. It's an excellent problem. It's better than the other problem, which is that no one's doing anything. But yeah, it is really important to me that we make sure that everyone is contributing in a way that lets them contribute for as long as they want to. And I have found that people, including myself, who show up and try to take on 25 things as opposed to one thing or two things, what happens is we either do all of them kind of, or half of them remotely a little bit. And then we burn ourselves out really fast. And I think that that's true across the board. When you have too many focuses, you can't really settle into any sort of rhythm for how you're doing those things. And so I always try to ask people to like start with some small stuff so that you can get your feet underneath you. You can start to understand how WordPress works, how the WordPress ecosystem works, because it's really complicated. Like the WordPress project and ecosystem is really hard to see from the outside. And so like when you first get started, if you're not pretty careful about focusing what you're working on and not, you can really make it so that you are really productive for a month and then you don't come back for 2 years. And I don't want that to happen to our volunteers. So
Sure, good. Right. So tell us about WordPress 5.6. How was that? I mean, tell us your experience. Did people come back and tell you, this is what happened and this is what I felt? Tell us about, how it was.
Yeah. So this release, WordPress 5.6, that came out in December, and it was our women and non-binary release squad. That, speaking of projects that have been going on for 3 or 5 years, I had been working toward that for 2, maybe 3 years at that point. Yeah. And so like, I was super excited that we were able to do it. It was a huge undertaking, and people across the board were really receptive to the idea. And we did a small survey of the people who participated both in the mentorship part, which happened in 5.5, the release that happened right before it, and then the actively leading part in 5.6, where they still had their mentors from 5.5, and they were doing the primary work. And a lot of them felt like when their mentor was excellent, they had what they needed to move forward. They were able to show up and contribute how they were wanting to, and had an excellent experience with learning how to do it. And a number of them have now taken all of that learning and continued on into different teams. We've got some folks who went to the marketing team and some folks who went to the hosting team, and a number who stayed with the core team, which I think is also excellent.
That's really lovely. That's really lovely to see.
Yeah. And I don't think that it was perfect by any means. I think we had a lot that we could have done differently, and a lot that in hindsight, I would have done differently as well. But also to see those women who felt like they had some concept of what to do, but not how to do it or where to do it, feel as though at the very least they had the right questions available to ask and the right people to give them answers was really heartening, I think. So
yeah, I'm sure. Yeah. Right. So that's great. So tell us about how does the the Make WordPress project, how does it try to build everything into the systems, and how do the teams come together really?
Yeah. That's a really big question. So how does the Make network work, and how does everyone work together?
How does it all come together? How does the magic happen? Tell us.
Yeah. So there are right now on paper, I want to say like 12 or 15 different teams, which is a lot. And we have our very, very big teams. I think core is one of our biggest teams just because that's where you can see where everything is going. I think community and polyglots and marketing. I think those are our like gigantic teams that we have. I think that we also have a bunch of teams who do gigantic work, but they have a tiny team. So like plugins, themes, support. I shouldn't have started this because now I'm going to feel bad for like not naming every single team. I love all my teams, and I'm sorry that I'm not going to mention all of you personally. But you know, we've got big teams with big mandates and big groups of people, small teams with small teams, small groups of people, and big mandates. And so that's kind of a thing that I am aware of for these groups. But the way that it all comes together, so we have this network of sites called, I refer to it as the Make Network. So it's everything on make.wordpress.org. All of those teams coordinate their work a little bit in our Slack instance and mostly do their like documentation and big discussions on the dedicated sites that they have on the Make Network and try to keep everyone aware of what's happening that way. I will tell you that it is not a process like making sure that each team knows what's happening and where it's going to affect them. This is not a process that we have perfected. A little bit, every single team just raises their flag about like, this is what we're doing, and expects other teams to come and find it, which is kind of where my work started. Right before I was the executive director, I was just trying to help move the information from one place to another where it was appropriate, making sure that each team knew what was working and not, and what was happening and not. But I don't know. This is a question that came up, I want to say, at State of the Word also, that I now am asking a new question of when your communication gets incredibly efficient, like what have you done to make it more effective? And so the last year and a half, maybe, I have been working with teams and team reps and all of my people in my group here at Automatic to make sure that we communicate more about what we're doing and where. But the result is that now brand new contributors have no idea where to start because it's just like hundreds and hundreds of posts. And so how it all comes together is kind of contingent on those team reps and how they know to communicate with other team reps and other groups that are going to be affected. And we get it right in a lot of cases, but there are a lot of cases where we also don't get it right. So lots of learning and improving that we can do together on that.
Sure. So tell us about, 2020 has been really about the online WordCamp. So tell us, how has it been? Has it led to an increase in moving to learning-based sessions, workshops? Where do you think it's going with online WordCamps? Do you think there'll be more of it next year? Or
this is
finally getting in person, so tell us.
Yeah. I will start with this general context of our in-person events are what sets the WordPress project apart from a lot of other open source software projects. The work that we all do to, like when we're at home, it's very easy just because of the mechanism of the internet to forget that there's a human behind all of the things being said, right? And so like you're working in this space where everybody can see you and you don't know who they are. It's just like an unending meeting where anybody could look at your notes and take you out of context because they don't know any of the decisions that WordPress has had to make in the last 17 years or whatever. And so like it's this really hard, it's a hard ask for all of our volunteers and all of our contributors and maintainers to ask them to routinely just like put your soul out there and hope everyone's okay with it. And the in-person events can kind of bring that back to a balance where all of the contributors and users and people who use WordPress and don't yet know about the community, like it's where people can remember, that person on the support forums is literally a person. That person in GitHub is actually a human being trying to help me. So like, I don't think that there is a point in the future where we say we have outgrown in-person events. I think that we will want to always have those in some format. But as far as what the future of in-person and online events is, I really hope that we have more of these hybrid events, or at the very least, routine opportunities, regular opportunities to have in-person events, because the greatest thing about these is that in order to get learning information and training to people who don't yet know about WordPress is not by asking them to spend their time and their money and their opportunity costs and to leave their business behind for a weekend so that they can go to a WordCamp that they don't know anything about yet. Like that's a really steep on-ramp if you aren't familiar with WordPress yet. And so the online events really remove a lot of the barriers that come with having primarily in-person events. So I hope that we do have some hybrid. Hybrid either in the event itself or just like we have in-person events and then also our online events. I don't know how that's going to look in the end. So I do hope for that. And then you also asked in that question about how that has affected online learning and online education opportunities for WordPress in general. And I think that it became clear, 2020 made it very clear that we, as the WordPress community, do a lot of our learning in kind of workshop settings as opposed to tutorial settings. Like tutorials are good. It gets you exactly a distance. It gets you like step by step to where you need to go on that. But the workshop stuff, which is normally what happens at our in-person events, gives you that active learning of like step by step, this is how you get this stuff done. But it also gives you an opportunity to do this passive learning where nobody else knows what it's going to take to get you from being 101 level to intermediate level to advanced level. And so you can make those choices yourself. And the training team and the community team, and I think a little bit the docs team, and I think a little bit the WPTV team, so it's kind of everywhere, have been working on learn.wordpress.org. If you all have not seen it yet, you should go take a look. There's a way to contribute your own content as well as get your own learning. If you need some training and learning opportunities, it's all there on learn.wordpress.org. It just launched December 15th, so it's not as much content as you find on like WordPress.tv or anything, but we get at least one new workshop there a week, I believe.
That's fantastic. That's lovely.
Yeah.
And where do you see that going? I mean, where do you see learn.wordpress.org in another, say, 2 years, 5 years?
Yeah. So I'm going to do a lot of hand waving now. So in the short term, I think the most important thing that we have to do for learn.wordpress.org is make sure that we have just generally the process of submitting content to it and reviewing the content and getting the content back out. I think that those are a lot of our short-term questions. The short-term content that we have to get in there, I think, is the getting from 0 to 101 level. Like there's so much content for WordPress 101. There's so much content for advanced WordPress, but those spaces between like just learned WordPress exists and now how to set up your site. That's a big step for a lot of people. And then the space between, all right, your site's up there, you have a new post and a new theme, you're ready to go. And all of our advanced stuff, there's not a lot of content that is easy to get online that way right now, because we've been doing it in in-person events. We've been doing it in like little online boot camps, which are not in our space in general. And so like, I think that is our current need. Our future needs, as far as I can see them, is making sure that what we are offering has the most current relevant information. Like there is a reason human beings have a limited amount of time and attention. That is the reason that we can't do this. But remembering that we're all humans and we have limited time and attention, there's no reason that WordPress.org and all of the sites that we manage and maintain can't be just like the canonical source for information about everything to do with WordPress.
Sure.
WordPress as a project often does just say, we put the thing out, everybody else now must go teach your clients and your friends how to use this. And sometimes because the work on a 17-year-old project is complicated and nuanced, the answer doesn't quite get out there the right way. And so I hope that for the long term, learn.wordpress.org can be the space where you can get reliable answers about the most complicated questions that you have about how to use WordPress, how to extend WordPress, and also how to give back to WordPress.
Sure. But do you worry about, how do you make sure it's updated and it doesn't get outdated very quickly? I mean, every time you have a release,
Yeah.
I mean, do you worry about that a lot? Because I would be.
Yeah, I worry about our content in general. I worry about making sure that our content is up to date a lot. There are a lot of teams who work really hard to make sure that at the very least we have flagged when things might be out of date.
Oh, okay.
So the docs team, and I know the marketing team also helps all of our contributor teams kind of know when something is out of date so that people can come and update stuff as they go. But it is a big question, and with video content especially,
Right.
like the work to get that done is quite a bit higher than just like, now I'm fixing a typo and I'm sending that along its way. And so it is a question that I have. And ages and ages ago, I had suggested that on WordPress TV, we should have a little flag that says this is about, WordPress, this is current up to WordPress version 5 point whatever on our videos, just like we have it on our plugins and our themes, because it's important to know the answers for how do I get a media gallery into my site are different for 3.7 than they are for 5.6. So,
sure. So tell us how it has been. I mean, if you had to, I'm sure you've had a lot of achievements in the last 6 years, 10 years with WordPress. But if you had to sort of think of one thing which you're like really happy, really proud of, one thing, or 2, 3 little things. Did I make that too hard?
No. I'm just thinking. One thing that I'm most proud of, gosh, I do. I have a million things I'm super proud of, and they're all about like my team members. And so, like, I don't know. I'm super proud of my teams. And that's internal and external. But given that I can't just be like, I'm proud of the fact that they did excellent work that they're proud of, because that's just too mom-like. The thing that I think I'm most proud of when I look over the last 6 years is the way that I have been able to build on the original sustainable concept of the WordPress community that was outlined way back in 2012 when we first said, okay, not all contributions are code. That I believe that's when our first teams showed up that were not specific code. And the way that I have been able to, using all of these wonderful contributors, both corporately sponsored and self-sponsored, to take that beginning idea and apply the basic concepts of open source philosophies to the way that we work, as well as what we work on.
Right.
That is the thing that I am most proud of. We're seeing now a big shift in the different types of voices that we're seeing that show up as like active and subject matter expert contributors in the space. It's not what we normally see in technology as the technology sector as it's considered.
I know.
It's not just like a bunch of white men from California or something. We've got a lot of women here. We have a lot of people of color here. In my first big like multi-year plan of being in charge of literally anything in WordPress, my biggest concern was making sure that these growth markets that I was seeing in like Asia and Africa had contributors to look at who looked like them and had the same general experience, so that they could feel like they belonged also, you know?
Sure.
And so I realized that's not like my proudest achievement is making WordPress to 40% of the web, but also like
that's something you should be proud of also.
I don't think I can own that one by myself. I think that was if I could own it by myself, I would be proud of it. But like I really have been so heartened by the way that the WordPress community just embraced this concept of like moving forward into this really big, truly global concept of WordPress maintenance ship that looks a bit like the world that we serve with our software.
Cool, Josepha. I think that's pretty much what we have for you right now. Thank you so much for taking the time and being with us. And it's been so lovely having you here.
Oh, I was just delighted that you all invited me. So thank you. And thank you so much for coming and hosting this Q&A with me.
Thank you. Thanks, Josepha. That's it. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.
So that brings to the end of WordCamp India 2021. It was spread over 6 days and over the last 3 weekends. We started with the workshops on the 30th and 31st of Jan, with the contributor days on 6th and 7th Feb. And finally, to top it off, the last couple of days on the 13th and 14th of Feb, we had some excellent speaker sessions. These past 3 weeks were great, pretty much great, weren't they, Shiba?
Yes, this unique format that we had was wonderful. And though it was experimental, it was within the confines that we had of the online format of WordCamps. We are very thankful for our sponsors who have supported us for this experiment. A big thank you for our exhibitor sponsors, Bluehost, SetCommerce, cPanel, Articam, Yoast, and Zesat Technologies.
And corporate sponsors, AppMaker, Bitform, CyberChimps, EasyWP, Infobarn Technologies, Pixelmatic, Store Apps, Upplers, WP Smallfix, WP Ikka, WP Flight, and WPoets. We also want to thank our speakers and workshop presenters and contributor day facilitators for leading participants on to discover new and great things on their WordPress journey. Speaking of journeys, Shiba, this one is coming to an end now.
Yeah. Yes, and before we come to an end, we want to thank all the organizers, volunteers who have worked with us for this past few months, organizing this format for us and never complaining and getting things done. We all had our highs and lows, and we all came out good at the end. And we hope to see each other soon online. And when things get back to normal, hopefully in person, really. I think everybody wants to do that. And with that, we want to wish all our viewers, participants, everyone involved a wonderful evening. And we want to also request whoever's registered for the Zoom call, please join in for after event networking. You can join us, let us know what you think about it, about this whole session.
Have a good day. Bye.